Well, we're expecting to see our government's justification for droning American terror suspects overseas, American citizens. In other words, the government killing U.S. citizens with no jury, no trial, no lawyers, no process, no nothing, just droning them to death. A short time ago, the Senate moved closer to confirming the man who wrote the legal memos that justify, according to the government, the drone strikes. President Obama nominated David Barron to be a federal appeals court judge. But with lawmakers from both political parties threatening to block or vote against his nomination, or I should say confirmation, the Obama administration signaled it will release parts of the memos to the public. Significantly, the document makes the legal case for droning Anwar al-Awlaki back in 2011. He was an American citizen and an accused al-Qaeda leader at the same time. Last year, President Obama said in his speech that it was indeed legal and that drone strikes have saved lives. But some lawmakers demanded to see the legal justification for themselves before they put the man who wrote it on one of the nation's highest courts. One of the most vocal critics of the drone strikes is Senator Rand Paul. And he said today that a promise to release the memo is not the same as actually releasing the memo.
They are releasing this memo under duress. And my guess is they're releasing this memo because they need a few more votes, and they'll get a few more votes by releasing these memos to the public or promising to release these memos. They will not be released. The memos justifying the killing of American without a citizen will not be released before the vote takes place. We've gone from not guilty, or you have to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, to an accusation being enough for an execution. I'm horrified that this is where we are.
The full Senate takes up the confirmation vote tomorrow. The full Senate will not have that memo tomorrow. In fact, an official tells Fox News we probably will not see the memo until next month. The reason? Because the administration is censoring parts that are classified. Let's take this to the judge. Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Well, we're going to release the memo, but we're not saying how much of the memo we're going to release. We're not going to say how much of it's going to be redacted. And we are saying that you're going to take this vote prior to seeing the memo.
You know, the timing is really beyond the pale, Shep. Last month, a federal appeals court here in New York City ordered them to release the memos. There's actually about 11 of them. And yesterday was the day by which the Obama administration had to either agree to release or appeal this decision of the federal appeals court to the Supreme Court of the United States. In order to pry loose a few more votes for Harvard Law professor David Barron's nomination to the bench today, they said we'll release them, but not until we go through and cross out what we don't want you to see, and we'll have that done for you in June. Here's the thing. If there are genuine military or diplomatic or national security secrets in there, no one would seriously suggest that that should be released. But these are legal memos. The government is entitled to no secrets, but they are not entitled to a secret law. The laws are public. The opinions of the court interpreting the laws are public. The government's rationale should be made public as well.
It seems to me that it's important, after speaking with a number of people in the legal community, for us to look directly at what's happening here and not be moved by things on the side. What happened here is the government decided that it was going to kill an American citizen, right, with nothing, no process as outlined by the Constitution, none of the rules to be followed, just the government kills a human being. That we don't like the human being, that the human being was that really isn't germane at the moment, is it?
It's actually worse than that, Shep. This human being, whose picture we were just showing on the screen, Anwar al-Awlaki, born in New Mexico, was never even indicted or formally charged with a crime.
Nothing.
Nothing. Second, he was followed for the last 48 hours of his life by 16 intelligence agents, American and Yemen intelligence agents, who never lost sight of him. They could have arrested him, brought him back to the United States. Aha! But they'd need a charge to arrest him.
But they didn't have one.
Correct. So how dangerous could he have been if the government never charged him with a crime, never indicted him with a crime, never asked him to come in, and never attempted to arrest him? In the president's defense, they actually leaked already a 16-page summary of these arguments.
Last year.
Yes. And that summary, which you've seen and I've seen, basically says this. If we think the person is really dangerous and it's nearly impossible to arrest him, we can kill him. There is no such law in the United States. When they said that, that's what caused people like you and me to say, wait a minute, we want to see what your rationale is. Because the courts have never ruled that way. The Constitution specifically prohibits it. And the federal laws, which you, Mr. President, have taken an oath to uphold, expressly prohibit that.
Now, this is all leading up to tomorrow. The man who wrote these memos, these legal memos, to Barron, is going to either be confirmed to be on a very high court in the United States or not. And those who will make the decision will do so without the benefit of what it is that he wrote.
Well, this is where I fully agree with Senator Rand Paul, and he was angry, and rightly so. If the government was going to be fair, if the Obama administration was going to be fair, they would have released those memos today before the vote on Professor Barron to become Judge Barron. They're going to release them after he's been nominated, after he's been confirmed, and after he's been sworn in. It'll be too late. No matter what's in those memos, it'll be too late. Judge Barron, Professor Barron, will be Judge Barron for the rest of his life. Second highest court in the land. Who would want to be judged by a judge who says the president can kill whoever he wants?
Without any charges.
Correct.
Without any indictments.
Correct.
With no arrest warrant.
Correct.
Just kill him.
Just kill him.
Welcome to America.
Modern day America.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
The Senate has voted 52-43 to officially put forward President Obama's nomination of David Barron as a U.S. Federal Appeals Court nominee. Barron served as a Justice Department official under President Obama and President Bill Clinton. Just before the vote this morning, Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul stepped forward to criticize the choice. On the floor of the Senate, he argued that Barron should be rejected on the grounds that the secret legal memo he wrote justifying the use of drones to kill an American terror suspect abroad violates the U.S. Constitution.
I rise today to oppose the nomination of anyone who would argue that the president has the power to kill an American citizen not involved in combat and without a trial, and that any nominee who rubber stamps and grants such power to a president is not worthy of being placed one step away from the Supreme Court.
A U.S. drone strike was used in the September 2011 killing in Yemen of Anwar al-Awlaki, an al-Qaeda leader born in the U.S. The vote to allow Barron to move forward in the process comes on the heels of a promise from the Obama administration to release the memo under court order, though it won't be made public right away. It has to go through a redaction process that will need to be approved by a judge, according to administration officials. I was joined earlier by political commentator Sam Sachs from Capitol Hill. I first asked him whether getting its nominee through the Senate was why the White House agreed to release this memo.
Well, that probably had something to do with it. I mean, Senator Rand Paul has clearly been the most vocal lawmaker about releasing these drone memos, but he's not the only one. This has really been a culmination of years of efforts by several lawmakers. More than 30 lawmakers have called on the administration to release this drone memo, going back as far as 2011. So while Senator Rand Paul might have been the latest senator speaking out to have them released, he's by far not the only one. But I think what's really motivated the White House's decision here was a court case last month when a federal court basically said that the White House doesn't have the authority to keep these memos classified anymore, that this is information that's been out there. The drone program is well known. And that the White House has to release this redacted version of these legal memos written by David Barron that justified targeted strikes against American citizens. So while all this was going on, while you have 2 out of 3 branches of the government weighing in, pressuring the White House to release these drone memos, you also have this nomination working its way through that could have been derailed without release of these memos, which probably was the final straw to get the White House to move on this.
So while Rand Paul was quite vocal today about his opposition to the nomination of Barron, listen to what one of the other senators, who was also a strong advocate for releasing the drone memo, had to say on the floor today.
And executive branch officials have now said that they will provide this memo to the American people as well. Madam President, this is, in my view, clearly a very constructive step, and I am going to vote yes on Mr. Barron's nomination.
So Ron Wyden is supporting Barron. Was this on the back of senators getting a chance to look at the unredacted memo ahead of its public release?
Well, I think based on the vote that we saw this afternoon, the cloture vote on the Barron nomination, this is one vote before a final vote, so he hasn't been officially confirmed. This is just ending the debate over his nomination. 52 votes supported it, so it looks like the White House and the Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid have the votes they need to confirm Barron when it comes down to that point. And I think it speaks to, why the White House had to release these memos. They got 52 votes. They needed 51. And we know that there were some Democrats like like Ron Wyden on the fence, like Senator Mark Udall, who were threatening to not vote for David Barron unless these memos were released. So he got those votes. It looks like it's headed for passage. I mean, the White House was never expecting to get Rand Paul's vote on this anyways. Rand Paul has viewed the memos, and he says that he's not voting for David Barron, not because the memos haven't been released, but because he doesn't agree with David Barron's legal analysis that shows that an American citizen can be killed, not in combat and without a trial.
Well, all of President Obama's drone strikes were a big topic today on the Hill. The 2001 authorization for use of military force was discussed in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today. It's 13 years old now. What does the White House and Congress want to do with this authorization moving forward?
Well, that's going to be remain to be seen. Last year, President Obama talked about how he wants Congress to refine the authorization for use of military force. Remember, this was what Congress approved back in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks, to give the president authority to use military force against those who perpetrated the attacks that included al-Qaeda and the Taliban. It's since been expanded over the last 13 years to include al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and associated forces, and it underpins drone strikes that we see the president carrying out all around the world, and it underpins indefinite detention that we see at Guantanamo Bay. So last year the president said, look, war cannot continue on forever, and he wants to work with Congress to find some way to narrow the authorization for use of military force and then eventually repeal it. Now, he dispatched two of his top lawyers in the administration, one a legal advisor for the Pentagon and another a legal advisor to the State Department, to talk with Congress today at a hearing of what to do with the AUMF. But the witnesses seemed completely unprepared about what to do with the AUMF. Lawmakers asked for proposals on what the president would do with the new AUMF, what he would like it to look like, and they were short on answers. So right now it remains to be seen what's going to happen eventually to this authorization for use of military force. There's some Republicans in Congress who want to see it expanded so that it can include more terrorist organizations that the president can target, including organizations that had something to do with the Benghazi attack. And you see Democrats who are looking to try and sunset this authority and repeal the AUMF altogether. And so far, the administration really hasn't given any concrete proposals on what to do moving forward with it.
So it does beg the question, though, there are those on Capitol Hill that think the AUMF isn't even needed at this point. Is that right?
Well, that's an interesting question, because when the witnesses, the attorney for the Defense Department and the attorney for the State Department, were asked by lawmakers, look, what powers does the president have right now that he wouldn't have if the AUMF was repealed? And they had trouble giving answers. They basically said that under Article 2, the president's powers to defend the country, he can carry out most of those strikes against so-called terrorists around the world without the AUMF. So that's a pretty broad interpretation of the president's war powers. There was even a suggestion made by the attorney with the State Department that if the White House deems that a foreign country is harboring a terrorist, that the president can use his Article 2 powers to launch war against that country without any approval from Congress. So that's certainly going to raise some eyebrows around Capitol Hill and kind of animate the debate moving forward of whether or not the AUMF is needed, and just how powerful the executive branch should be in this continual so-called war on terrorism.
All right. Thank you very much, political commentator Sam Sachs.